I want to encourage all the participants, actually, when we go and do this, that they go ahead and ask their questions, because the purpose of this is to get people interested and encourage them to get involved with the Morgenthaler-Pavey startup competition. So I am Scott Shane. I am the Mixon Professor of Entrepreneurial Studies, and about 4 years ago now, I reached out to Gary Morgenthaler and Bob Pavi about doing and funding a competition to support entrepreneurship at Case Western Reserve University. And that led to the Morgenthaler-Pavey startup competition. And then a few years ago, the Generator folks joined to support the effort with a gBeta program, and Ája Hardy will explain that a little bit later there, and that's the competition that we have. So what I'm going to do is now shift to Ryan Cleary, and then we'll go to Ája. If Ryan, you could introduce yourself and explain really why you're here and part of the panel.
Hey y'all, it's great to connect with y'all today. My name is Ryan Cleary, alumnus 2016 from Case Western. Scott was kind enough to introduce me here and invite me to come aboard and speak with you all today. I'm the co-founder and COO of FloatMe, and FloatMe is a digital platform that's democratizing financial services for low middle income millennial employees. We went through the gBeta program and Morgenthaler-Pavey competition last spring, had a really great experience with it, and I'm here today to answer some of your questions, share what value we got out of it, and really encourage you guys, no matter what stage you're at, no matter what you're looking to do, to apply for it. Really, the value is extremely high, and I'm looking forward to sharing more.
Hey, hello everybody. My name is Ája Hardy. I am the director of gBeta Cleveland out here. We got 20 plus programs, so I'm not the lone gun here. We have a lot of different programs here to choose and to physically, tap if we need to in terms of, interest level and just brain power in general. Happy that Ryan was a part of the cohort. We've had one completed cohort thus far. We're currently in our 4th week in our 2nd one. We're slated to have 2 cohorts a year. And so we look forward to, having the next Morgenthaler-Pavey pitch competition startup / gBeta cohort coming forward. And just happy to be here and answer any questions you may have and tell you all about what Generator is.
Well, great. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start us off a little bit in explaining how the competition works, and then I'll transition to Ája to explain how the gBeta program works. So the way that the competition effort works is every year we make it possible for alumni of Case Western Reserve University and current students to enter the competition. Now, in past years, we limited the level of the alumni to only those who had graduated in the past 5 years. But this year, because the competition and gBeta and everything is going to be virtual, we're sort of opening it up to any level of participant. So, alums going back, I guess, 50, 60 years, if people are interested and have a startup idea, they could join. And the mechanism here is that by November 15th, there's a deadline to submit, and people submit a very short description of the team and the company. And the main thing in the description that they need to provide is some statement that someone is an alum or current student at Case Western Reserve University, and that person has at least 1% of equity in that venture. Because we're not opening this up to everyone of any age anywhere in the world, right? So it's limited to some connection to Case Western Reserve University. And along with that form, the team submits a pitch deck. And then the set of submissions then get evaluated by my entrepreneurial finance class. So part of the exercise for the class is to evaluate the submissions that come in and reduce that to the set that become the finalists for the competition. So the idea is that students are the ones who are in the role of venture capitalists and deciding who makes it into, in effect, the gBeta pre-accelerator, and are the set of companies. It's 5 companies that will join the gBeta and pitch in the startup competition. So with that, I'm going to turn it to Ája to explain what that second phase is with the gBeta program and how that works.
Yeah, no, thanks. So the gBeta program is we like to term it a pre-accelerator program, and the idea that it's not equity-based accelerator, which is really truly like our bread and butter and how we started in this game here. We have several equity accelerators, and we expanded our footprint when we saw a number of different businesses come through. Some that were primed to physically, go forward and do equity, and us to put them in front of investors and to put in a deal flow. And then we had others who weren't just quite there yet. And so we wanted to give something to them, help them move them along. And as we grew, we saw more companies, as you can imagine. And so the go-to-market strategy is that we are a generator in gBeta, and particularly or in secondary markets, prime for getting that innovation, those bright minds out of that area to physically be in front of investment, not only in their particular area but also nationally, because we're a national-based program. With that, the pre-accelerator is 7 weeks. And I always like to tell people that 7 weeks seems like a lot if you look at the calendar, but as Ryan can attest, it really isn't a lot of time. It's enough to do what we are here to do. But with that being said, we are a true accelerator. I know that name gets tossed around a lot, and in some cases, people even make it part of their naming convention of their programs. And it would be like a traditional classroom setting or something like that. We are not that. We are a concierge program, which truly means that the 7 weeks, if you put it in the real world evidence-based, medicine that everybody looks at, or corporate America structure, that's just enough time to do a project or a product sprint. So that's what I like to tell people. It's an agile product sprint. It really is what thread in your company can you impact or want to focus on 7 weeks, and what can we help you move that needle on, because the goal of the game is traction. When you get in front of individuals like Scott, or individuals who are investors on their own, or have investment firms and groups, they're really looking to see what have you done, how have you managed the money that you currently have, and how have you managed your startup, and then if you were to attain more money, what would that look like where would you place it, and so it's really the name of the game is traction. So we help you gain traction on a couple of those threads within your businesses along the way.
So I'm going to add, thank you. So I'm going to add a couple things in a minute on this, but I about how the competition works at the end and the link to your demo day. But can you comment on, in general, what's the goal of companies doing gBetas in general, including the Morgenthaler-Pavey startup competition? What are you trying to get them to?
Sure, yeah. We always talk about how there's 4 to 5 main goals that we've seen throughout the programs that we've, launched in various regions. Like I said, 20 plus, over 500 companies have already been through our programs and accelerators that we have. And so with that being said, we see one of the goals is that the company wants to go into an equity-based accelerator, and they're physically looking at this as how can they prime themselves for that opportunity? What can they do to, can they put themselves in the idea of the fast pace that it is, and see if they can, do that going forward. So equity-based accelerator is one goal. The other goal is to continue in fundraising, whether it's more than likely pre-seed or seed for us. Because we are early stage, really truly early stage in terms of our pre-accelerator. So the fundraising of at least $50,000 or more is what we're looking at, and that's all that timeline starts once they graduate, so to speak. So we do keep track with them and keep in contact with them after graduation. It's not a one and done thing with us. You're part of the family afterwards. So we have equity-based accelerator, we have the continuation of fundraising, we have most recently IP Alpha Partnership, because we are a platform, we're a VC platform. So we do have a Project North, which is a corporation membership, as well as an on-ramp, which is a conference arm. And so we do look to make those connections for, if you're looking at IP Alpha Partnership. And the fourth is, of course, some people are ready to exit. Some people are saying like, hey, I know this is a great idea. I know what we have is good. Our algorithm is good. Our tech is good. Our product is good. And if we get absorbed by, say, another larger company, then that's what our focus is. And so that's the top four goals, if you will, like main goals that we've seen companies look at coming through our program.
Great, thanks. So I'm going to turn it to Ryan in 1 second and ask him for some views from the startup perspective. But I want to add that the unique thing about the Morgenthaler-Pavey startup competition gBeta is that all of these gBeta programs have a pitch night at the end where startups pitch to investors. The unique twist is that is also the Morgenthaler-Pavey startup competition. And so the 5 finalists in the competition in 2021 will pitch for $50,000 in prizes that are given by the Morgenthaler Family Foundation and the Pavey Family Foundation. So the first prize is $25,000, the second prize is $15,000, and the third prize is $10,000. And that's a grant, not an investment, right? So that's, in essence, from the startup's perspective, free capital. That's an award for the activity. So I'm gonna turn to Ryan now and ask him, from the perspective of being a startup, what his experience was with both the competition and the gBeta program itself. Like, if you could just describe a little bit about your experience and how it went for you.
Absolutely, Scott. Yeah, so really just taking a real quick step back from that. One of the things that we found as a team that was just really awesome about the gBeta and Morgenthaler-Pavey was the variety of different backgrounds from the people who went through the program and the variety of different stages everyone was at. We were a little bit of an outlier in that we were probably a little bit further along than a lot of the other companies. We'd previously gone through an accelerator. Scott and Ája's partner, Patrick, kind of had to cajole us a little bit and sell us a little bit to get us on board. And to this day, I'm super thankful that we did take their great advice and went through with it. From day one, the content was really helpful. Both the sessions that they were having, as far as helping us revisit a lot of preconceived notions that we had, things that we previously looked at over the past year and a half as we built out FloatMe. It forced us to revisit a lot of assumptions we've made, really explore, now that we're a year and a half in, does this still hold true? Has this changed? So there's a lot of benefit just from that perspective of the actual, maybe more structured programming. But for us, the biggest benefits actually came not from the money, not from the dedicated programming, but it came from the network of both the mentors and the other members of the program that went through with us. Ája, I think, touched on some of this with, talking about gBeta and Generator, but almost undersold it a little bit. I mean, gBeta and Generator has this, not just national network, but international network of different accelerators that they work with through the Global Accelerator Network, partnerships with large corporations. We've gotten a ton of resources completely free from places like Amazon Web Services, Google for Startups, that have all really allowed us as a company to, be able to save money and reinvest what limited capital that we have into focusing on things that, like, how are we going to hire the right people? How are we going to be able to, make sure that we're able to, build out the right products and functionality that you otherwise wouldn't have access to. And that's something that I think gets a little bit lost with accelerators and programs like these, is that the value isn't that cash prize at the end. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love free money, and Scott is not underselling the value of a equity-free grant. Anybody who offers you a check in the startup world is usually saying, hey, I'll give you this check, but it's going to come with a chunk of your company or an interest rate or something with it. This is, free money is the best kind of money, and you really only get that with grants. But that's not really the biggest reason to do it. Like, the biggest reason is to go through a program like this is to build out your network and expand it, because the people in that network, they have a shared experience. They're the people who you can bounce ideas off of. They're the people you can go to and say, hey, do you know anyone who's worked with a large financial institution, let's say, or help build out a credit building product? And one of the cohort members we went with, Axel Thimon, who built out Wisest, we've made some interest for him. He's made some for us. Your fellow cohort members are going to be incredibly valuable, along with just what Generator and gBeta brings to the table. The other thing is, everybody here on this call, for the most part, are Case Western alums or current students. Case Western's network is really great, and this gives you exposure to a lot of people who you may not necessarily have a direct connection with in that network. We've gained a few investors who came out of Case Western. We've had a few people who've provided some select mentorship or help make additional connections for us through the Case Western network. That's not a small thing. And the final thing that I really say that was hugely valuable for us was just all the continuous feedback that we got throughout the program and after it. Just initially, we actually, I think, applied for Morgenthaler-Pavey twice. We did it the 2018 cycle. I think initially got a lot of feedback on the slide deck, which admittedly was not great at the time, and then turned around and applied again and got in 2019. So that first pass through, which, for some people on this call, maybe this is you just starting out that foray with this just broad idea, or you're just getting something started, just getting that initial feedback on what's, where are the holes in your concept, what do you still need to work on? That's also really valuable, because this is a group of people and a network of mentors and supporters, and who are going to have some really hard conversations with you and tell you what about your concept doesn't work or what you need to think about more. That's the type of feedback that's really tough to get from people who are your friends or your family. And that's the type of feedback you really want to get before you're in a room filled with VCs or other investors, because by the time you hit that point, like, you don't really get a second chance easily with them. So you want to go in with your A game, and these are the people who will help you get to that point.
Thank you. So I'm going to, I have some more questions for the panelists, but I'm going to pause here and see if any of the people joining us have a question they want to ask right now. If they do, we'll go with that. And if not, I'll go on with some of my questions.
I have a question.
Please, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sabah, and I'm a fellow in Great Lake Energy Institute this year. So I'm really interested in the gBeta Accelerator program. So I was wondering, when you select students or startups, is there a criteria you look into? And also, does those startup need investment, any sort of investment to be selected? Yeah, these are my two questions.
Okay, so maybe I should take this because it's a sort of structural question. So nobody needs to have any investment at all to apply initially for the competition and the program. The only requirement is that one member of the team for the venture be an alum or a current student at Case Western Reserve University, and that person have 1% or more of equity in the venture, right? So if you got, let's say, Elon Musk and Peter Thiel to join you, if you had 1% of the company, that team of the three of you would be fine for entering the competition. And we're pretty sure we could, point out some things. I know that Ája has some great advice for all of them. The set of people I just described. But the other part of the question actually, maybe if you could repeat whether I missed part of the question.
Yeah, so my question was, what are the selection criteria for the gBeta Accelerator program?
So the selection criteria, we have them posted, at least if we need to update it on the web, but last year they were there. The way that this works is that the students in the entrepreneurial finance class, as the final project, are randomly assigned a subset of the companies that submit to the program. There's a rubric that we have where they are evaluating and writing a memo with written content about their evaluation of the venture, but also alongside of that, there is a quantitative score on a set of criteria. Those quantitative scores are added up across the set of randomly chosen members of the class that evaluate, and then averaged for each venture, and then the top 5 scorers are advanced from all the submissions. I think we had roughly 50 submissions, and then there's 5 that would then enter the Morgenthaler-Pavey startup competition gBeta. Then during that 7-week program, all of those companies participate. Then at the end of the program, there's a pitch night. At that pitch night, we bring in professional investors to evaluate who wins the $25,000 prize, who wins the $15,000, who wins the $10,000, et cetera, of prize money.
Thank you, got it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions at this point?
Yes, I have a question. Hi, I'm a student. I'm a junior at Case Western. I'm majoring in computer science, and so my question was, what would you define as a startup? Would a company established in 2018 be considered a startup?
So for the purposes of this competition, any company that the participants believe to be a startup is fine. The criteria that we're using are criteria about the team. So if you are a current student, you're eligible, and as long as you have that portion, 1% or more of the company, then you're eligible. Now, if you started that company in 2016, you would be eligible. If you started that company in 2018, if you started the company in 2014. Over the years, we've had a couple of companies that were pretty far along at the time that they entered. I don't remember exactly how many years old some of them were, like Nexus AI, Phil Alexander's company, or Everykey, but they were, more than 1 or 2 years old. We leave it up to the entrepreneurs to judge if they think this would be valuable enough to enter. Now, in the evaluation part that the team is doing, that is, by that I mean the class that's making the evaluation, they are acting as investors would. And the way that investors would look at a company is to measure traction of some kind relative to the age of a company. So if you started your company in 1960 and you are still pre-revenue, you're probably not going to make it in. On the other hand, if you started at the beginning of 2020 and you have a couple of pilot customers, that's an awful lot of traction in a pretty short period of time. So the judgment is in that relative sense. Does that answer the question?
Yes, that certainly does. Thank you.
Other questions before I go on for more for the panel? Okay, so I'm gonna ask Ryan a couple of questions here. Like Ryan, you said that you had a little bit of you weren't sure you wanted to do it. We had to twist your arm a little bit, and that suggests that you might have had some pleasant surprises from doing the program. I'm wondering what was a surprising benefit of the program, something that you didn't expect especially given that you had experience doing other accelerators.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and kind of I think to build on that a little bit, and based on the question we just had, we were about 2 years old when we went through Morgenthaler-Pavey. We'd previously raised about a couple $100,000, been through a pre-accelerator and then an accelerator at that point. So we were kind of skeptical initially because we were like, what more can we really get out of this? I think the two most surprising things were, one, how much we still had to learn. And, a lot of that was, having people come in who were fresh faces that weren't part of Venture for America, who weren't part of our existing investor network, who weren't part of our friends and family, and just challenging certain key assumptions that we had. And I'll say, like, Ája was always great with that. And then Patrick, who I don't know whether Patrick's doing it this year or not, but he's the gBeta director down in Youngstown. He really pushed us to think through how can we, attract customers beyond the ways we already were. And sometimes really turning a lot of our assumptions on their head. The other kind of thing that came as a bit of a surprise was, just how big and how expansive gBeta's and Generators network was. We really didn't have them on our map at first. You hear all about like Y Combinator, you hear about Techstars and 500 startups, these big names that everybody wants to get into this accelerators program. But there's this other group of accelerators and accelerator networks around the US that don't have quite as much press coverage, but are still these really expansive networks that as soon as you're able to get into that network, you're able to get a lot of benefits. We actually ended up getting our lead investor in our current round came out of that, out of some early conversations that we had. I think it was actually it was either in the accelerator when we first met them, or it was right afterwards through another gBeta generator event. So, that was obviously a huge surprise to us going through it. And I think that just the third piece is how much you learn from the other participants. These are people who are at all different stages of their careers, all different wide variety of backgrounds. One group was just a group of students who went through I think it was Great Lakes Innovation. I'm always blanking on what it's called specifically, but it was a nice method. Yes, that was it. Thank you. It's fellowship of some kind with Great Lakes Energy. Yes. As that was just a group of students, but they had some really interesting questions that we weren't necessarily going to get because we were all, our team was, two guys in their, mid to late 20s, plus another team member who was in their, late 30s, early 40s, and another couple developers who were in their, 30s as well. We weren't necessarily recent students. And those questions really helped us rethink parts of our product that we maybe wouldn't have otherwise. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you had somebody who'd worked in a community bank, who'd done all these really crazy things, building out investment strategies and stuff, which is this really deep level of expertise that none of us necessarily had on our team. So that's, I think, another area that we just really were caught a little bit with a pleasant surprise. So I think, Scott, did I kind of cover your question there?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So I'm going to ask Ája now to give us the understanding of like the details of how this program works, like during the 7 weeks. Like, can you explain what happens when for the founders?
Yeah, so the 7 weeks is around 60, 70 hours in total if we had to break it out. And it's a couple of components. We have an element we call Mentor Swarm, which is essentially like a mentor speed dating round where every week we physically have, of course it's virtual now, so it's a little bit shorter. We typically break bread and had dinner with that when we were in person. So now it's about like an hour 30 or so. But we're utilizing Zoom and breakout rooms. But essentially, we have some I guess repeating, if you will, mentors that we know there are some standard asks about. Like we typically have someone who's an expert in customer service. We have someone who is like we used Air CFO for a couple times in reference to financial back office situations, CROs and things like that too. And then I try to look at, I would say I hate the word try, in fact, I physically do. I attempt to look at like the cohort that we have coming in and see if I can pull from either, our internal, like you said, generator internal network, or i.e. my personal network, to bring people on board that are geared in their industry and their specific nature. And so in Ryan's case, and also in Wise's case, like I said, Ryan said that he was definitely a little bit further along. Wise's hadn't created their beta as of yet. And so both of them being fintech apps that were geared for, possibly a novice or either individuals whom were in a certain, bracket, we look to bring community people in, community leaders, because that's going to be your target, right? Your target market is those individuals. And so we did a mix of not only experts, but also, potential customers and investors in that mentor swarm. So that's weekly. And that's one day, typically Thursday, weekly. The other piece of the puzzle is we have lunch and learns that I think some of you guys have, been privy to, or even seen some of the communications. Those lunch and learns are typically open. They are open to the public. Again, we're all virtual right now. So we have a meetup group. So I would say go and take a look at Generator Ohio in your meetup group section. Every Tuesday, we're doing them now, but every Tuesday in the lunchtime, we do have a topical session. So it's a presentation, it's Q&A, and that's the only thing I would say is pretty much standard with what's happening within Generator and gBeta and our programming, because we have a Dex, we have Q&A, we mix it up. It's not the speaking head. We typically have speakers coming through that are subject matter experts, but all those topics are geared directly towards the executive summary, which is one of our deliverables within gBeta, which is your resume for your company that you are going to be handing off to investors and investment houses. And so, for example, this week we had a presentation on comparables, and we brought in Lean from North Coast Ventures, and she and I, co-presented, and she also, offered some real-world advice in reference to how a venture fund like themselves, like North Coast, looks at comparables and how to utilize it. And so that's what we're doing, and that's also open to the public. So that's the second component. The other component in terms of what's the concierge piece is that you get 2-hour sessions. So, 1 hour for 2 days, if you will. So 2 hours in total in the week that you physically have a meeting with myself. And then we also bring in some individuals within our network and gBeta, again, based off of what your thread, you identified your thread that you wanted to, growth hack, if you will, for that 7 weeks. And then also based off of, in some cases, your industry, if we're looking at some industry expertise for you. So the concierge coaching, consultation, looking at strategic planning for you, the mentor swarm, the lunch and learns that are then kind of reinforcing what's happening within the deliverable space as far as executive summary is concerned. And then the investor swarm that we have in the 6-week, meaning that we get you in front of individuals who have the potential to sign those checks in terms of, if you're doing your rounds or not, or even if you're looking at equity accelerators, we get you in front of individuals like that as well, where you do a 5-minute pitch, 10-minute Q&A. So we're prepping you along the way, helping you with that pitch. So, as Ryan mentioned, he had pitched before, he had won, even competitions before. And there's various timings of pitches that people do here in the market I've seen. But we're looking at the premise of, if you were caught in an elevator, well, how can you spit this out in 5 minutes, if you will, and possibly have like some questions with this individual. So we do a 5-minute pitch and we do a 10-minute Q&A. So that happens at the 6th week. And then the 7th week is you wrapping up, possible extension if it is of that investor swarm based off of how many people we get. And then as Scott mentioned, we don't typically do pitch competitions. We do a pitch night or a demo night, as it's told in the industry. But in this case, your pitch competition / pitch night will be the same thing. So those are the components.
Great, thank you. So I just want to clarify one thing and then provide a little bit more detail. So just so people don't get confused, Ája also runs the gBeta program in Cleveland that's for the city of Cleveland. So when she's referring to an event that occurred today, the Lunch and Learn is for that other gBeta, right? So she has to earn a living here. And so unfortunately, the generator people make her work year round as opposed to just a couple months a year. Just 7 weeks would be great, not going to happen. There. So that I want to be clear. But I also want to highlight a couple of things because I think that oftentimes like the generator folks don't sell hard enough on the value that they're providing. So I want to give some information here about how good some of this stuff is. So I know last year, because I saw the statistics, that the number of unique investors that came into the investor swarm for these companies was in the 30s. I believe it was 33 unique investors. Now, being in Northeast Ohio, you don't normally get 33 unique investors for a startup as a general rule, right? And part of the reason why they did that is because they're bringing in investors from elsewhere. There are, California VCs that are joining the event remotely, or New York VCs that are joining in and doing this in hearing. So that's an awful lot of exposure. The order of magnitude of the mentor swarm is of equal size, right? This is a lot of potential mentors, and there's a lot of range and variation in the skill set of the mentors, right? You really don't want to hear my advice as a mentor on your customer support activity, because I actually don't know anything about customer support or customer success. But getting a mentor who's an actual expert on SaaS companies' customer success is really valuable to have, or somebody who has built sales, or the people who are at other accelerators, or are sales experts or operations experts. That's really valuable here. The other thing that I just want to add is that it's hard for Ája to talk about herself, obviously. So these 2-hour sessions that the startups get, I mean, one of the real values of this is that the directors of the gBeta program are going to whip you into shape. Like, you're going to get poked and prodded questions like, well, what is that customer acquisition cost? Like, did you just make that up 5 minutes ago? Or is there some basis? Have you done the customer discovery questions? Have you built the beta? You said last week you were going to build your beta. Where's the beta, right? Because you're not going to get good customer feedback if you don't have something there. And I just think that's really valuable. And just the plug is that Ája actually does it nicely, which I think is a really tremendous skill, because when I do it, it's really not very nice, as Ryan knows, as me being an investor. I'm just going to do it, but not as nicely. So I think it's a really valuable activity there. So I'm going to go and pause here again and see if this has provoked more questions from the participants. Okay, so I have another question for Ája then. What kinds of startups do you think do best in the Morgenthaler-Pavey startup competition gBeta, either by industry or by stage or by type of team or any dimension? Like, who do you think is really right for this?
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate that. Like the commentary that Scott was mentioning about the meetings is strictly because we were all both in Clee work in the first cohort, and it is a co-working space. It's not very soundproof. So he probably heard everything we were talking about and every comment that we had in reference to those meetings. But yeah, so in terms of like, what's the best company that we've seen thus far, I think quite frankly, what's happening within the market trend right now in COVID, we're going to see a lot more solopreneurs. And so we're preparing ourselves as a company for that, just to put that out there, carte blanche. But if you are a founder and have a co-founder, I mean, it's the idea is that we want you to physically be a part of this program, but still be able to run your company, right? And this is why we have this very, crucial direct conversation even when I'm recruiting and letting people know that, if you have to break it down, it's probably like 10 hours a week or something like that, right? Because you will have a little bit of homework, being that the deliverables are the executive summary, the pitch deck, and then we have like your company updates, which is going to then form into your physical monthly update that every company is supposed to be doing anyway to their investors, their friends and family. And so if you haven't gotten onto that level where you physically have some consistent communication to individuals who are even interested with your company, then that would be a quote unquote deliverable for you, because we've been going through that and working with you on that. So if I had to break it down, there's technically 4 deliverables. And so some things that you would be doing, some homework on, in addition to, maybe some pieces to move because of your physical, thread that you've assessed. So it could be done by a solopreneur, but it would be definitely something to juggle, another thing to juggle for you. And so I definitely want people to take that into consideration and think about that. We've seen success rates mostly if there is somebody else to kind of balance it out, like the balancing of the scales. So co-founder, founder, type of thing. Ryan was the sole representative here with us for FloatMe. But we also had, his, CEO, Josh, on the line, consistently when we had team meetings. And so a couple of times, even with, he mentioned Wisest and Axel, Axel was the sole person who was physically in the meetings. But a couple of times we had to have, I think the beta story is a little bit like Axel, because we were pushing Axel for his beta. But we did have to have meetings with him and his engineer on the line, right? And just had that hard conversation of, hey guys, where is it? Like what's going on? We've been working on this for a couple of years now. Where is it? How can we help you? So that's so the team mentioned, that's what I would say. In terms of industry, we're industry agnostic. gBetas are typically industry agnostic. You will see that if you take a look at our website, we have moved into some industry verticals strictly by way of sponsorship. So the idea, what we have right now out there is medtech. And gBeta medtech was brought back before COVID, but it definitely is apropos now. And then we have a gBeta social impact, because you're seeing a lot more social impact corporations, and particularly B Corps, that are popping up, or individuals converting, non-for-profit organizations to B Corps. And so we wanted to, be able to lend a hand there. So those are our 2 verticals that we have in terms of gBeta, but every other gBeta, including ourselves, is industry agnostic. So we work with all types of things. If I had to say what we don't have a lot of, I would say within Generator and just, our portfolio even is, and I took a look at that most recently, B2B SaaS is a little limited. I think because it takes a lot of manpower, it takes a lot of money going forth, that it tends to be a heavy lift for some in terms of early stage investment as well. But we do have a handful that are coming in the pipe right now. I take it, as I think about it, we have maybe 5 or 6, including one that was most recently in Scott's class to doing MentorStorm Zenlord Pro. So we do have B2B SaaS coming up, but that has been something that's been limited within our portfolio and even in our gBetas. What we have a lot of is we do have we do have some SaaS, going in, but we do have a lot more D2C, direct to consumer companies. And I guess our next step would be more B2B. If I had to put it around an industry, when we first started doing gBetas, we saw a lot of consumer product goods, right? But then of course, with that market trend and shifting, now we're seeing a lot more services oriented. So, looking at how could I assist realtors in, doing their job better by way of an algorithm or by way of operating, their processes and workflow. And then here's how it looks, that type of problem solving, critical thinking masses. That was what we're seeing in terms of beefing up the companies that we have going forward. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's really good. So I want to see if there are some more questions from the group. Otherwise, I've got a couple more follow-ups here.
I have a quick question. I'm
Please.
Saba again. So I wanted to add something about Aja. So I'm also part of a company, Roller Rack, and I just wanted to say that Aja has been keeping us on track with her monthly update. So she's really great at that, and that's what one of the great thing about gBeta Accelerator program. But this time I'll apply for my own company that that we are working on. So that was one thing. But my question is to actually to Ryan. So you said you applied to 2 cycles, to 2018 and 2019, right? If you could just tell me, like, what was the difference from the last time and what actually happened, helped you to get selected for the 2019 cycle?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, thinking this through, it feels like it's been way longer than it actually has been. Time kind of tends to fly a little bit. Yeah, so I mean, the biggest differences were one, I mean, when we applied, I think for the 2018 cycle, playing this through quick, we had just gone through our very first beta. We still were figuring out our original founding team. We had a bare bones product that was described by one of our early customers as being about as pretty as a Happy Meal box. Like, it was just not great. We didn't have a lot of data to work with, and we had maybe $10,000 total to work with. We were trying to figure everything out. And the slide deck that we put together, like, it was a good slide deck if you were a consultant. It wasn't a great pitch deck. It left out a lot of key metrics, I think, that you would have benefit from. I think that Scott and Morgenthaler-Pavey, I think that there's a little bit more guidance now around that deck than there may have been in 2018. And to be frank, we also didn't hear about it, I think, until it was maybe 2 days before the final submission date. So we also threw this thing together last minute. So, other thing takeaway, start early. Don't wait until 2 days before then. It works with college finals. It doesn't work with pitch competitions. The other really big difference I'll say is by the time the 2019 cycle rolled around, we had already built out a wait list. We'd already proved out some traction. We'd run that initial very early beta test. We had a product live in the market space. And that's not something, those aren't all things that you need to get into this competition and do well in it. That's just the stage that we were at. Where some of the other companies who were going through it were at was they'd gone out and they'd done some customer validation. They'd gone out, they conducted surveys, they conducted customer interviews. So going out and just talking to people and learning, hey, is my problem real? Is it valid? They'd gone out and kind of conceptualized, what are some of the costs that this is probably going to have? What am I looking to get out of this program? Where are my, big needs or the big questions I still need to figure out? I think that's really about the stage that some of the things that you want to have answered before you start putting together your pitch deck to put it in there, because those are things that you can do pretty easily without even spending a single penny. It's just, when we first were exploring it, what we did is we went out to a ton of different payday loan stores. We talked to people on the street. We went out, to some college campuses and just talked to students and made notes. And we probably did about 100 to 200 interviews before we even really started investing a ton in building out a product. And, at that point we had no money. We had, we were just a team of guys who'd recently met. All that really helped us prove out that, hey, this is a concept that we can take forward with. We've proven out this problem. And we also, we're able to figure out some assumptions that we'd made weren't true, and saved ourselves a lot of time, money, and, headaches that otherwise would have come to bit us down the line. Plenty of other things, decided to come up and bite us in the butt, but fortunately there's another stuff we figured out early on.
Thank you so much for the answer. It helps.
Are there other questions? So I want to add a couple of facts because I know the story of some of this. So one of the other things, it's not just the level of the pitch deck at the time that people submit, because there are plenty of companies that were in last year's Morgenthaler-Pavey startup competition and gBeta who were as early as FloatMe was in 2018. But part of it is that to get in, people have to hear that there's a customer problem that exists and there's some kind of solution that's being offered, right? So I'm thinking about some of the different companies where, Wisest last year was pretty early, and they didn't have a product developed yet, but they had an identified problem and a plan for the solution, and it got them to a stage where they could get in. And I think there's two parts of this that are important. One is that if you don't have a identified customer problem and you don't have a solution, you don't really have a reason to have the business yet, and so you got to have that. And the second part is it goes to the deck, right? If the deck is going to say something that doesn't tell people what the problem is and how you're going to solve it, doesn't communicate it, it's going to be pretty hard to get in because the people evaluating it aren't going to understand what you've done. So I think those are two things that are important. And obviously, accelerators are really good at helping with that activity. So when people go through around somewhere else, they might have helped them move that forward. Also put in a plug for other activities that go on, like, it doesn't hurt to join the lunch and learns and other things for the other gBetas, particularly right now as they're virtual there, because somebody saying, how do you figure out if there's a customer problem and how do you figure out what the solution is, or how do you put together a pitch deck? I mean, you could join the lunch and learn, hear that, and maybe that will help you with your submission to the competition and stuff for this year. So I'm going to just see, because we only have a couple more minutes, if there are any other pressing questions from people. And if not, I will just ask the two other panelists if there's something I should have asked that I didn't ask for them to add. But before I do that, are there any other questions? Okay, if there's nothing else, we'll go first to Ryan and then with Ája. What did I not ask you that people need to know, and what did the participants not ask you that they need to know about the competition or gBeta?
Man, I mean, Scott, there are so many great questions. I think the two things that I'd really like to highlight that weren't touched on as much as they probably should have been for everybody in the audience's benefit. One is the accountability factor. Ája is really nice. Scott's pretty nice too. Don't let him scare you off. But one of the things that was most helpful to us was just having someone who is accountability buddy, just like pinging us and saying hey, where's the update? Hey, do you need any help with this? Or hey, I asked you about this before. Can you, give me an update on that? Guilt motivated by letting other people down, it's a very powerful tool. I've been a solo founder before, and I was way less successful at that than I was, having a team of co-founders. And we as a team were definitely much less successful than we started having people who were expecting updates from us and would then, care enough to follow up and say, hey, what's going on? I haven't heard from you in a little bit. And I think the other thing that goes along with that is the support doesn't end at the end of the Morgenthaler-Pavey. We still have a monthly conversation with Ája every single month. She still asks us about updates, still asks us, hey, did you get the customer support portal in order? Which we'll have some fun updates for you next time we chat about that. Scott's pretty similar on that. He will, keep on you very emphatically, and he will come at all hours of the day, all hours, and make himself very available when you need it. So Yeah, that's the one thing is the accountability factor and the support network. The other thing is this is really fun. I mean, if you're at all interested in just exploring, building a company, this is kind of the really lightweight, easy way to do it, or at least as easy as it can be. You have room to fail in that, there's going to be people who are going to be supportive of you. There's going to be people who will, give you room to, make some mistakes and help you course correct that you're not really going to get if you're just, going out completely solo or even as a team without this kind of network of support. This is kind of like, still having some training wheels on the, bicycle. Take advantage of that. And while you're doing it, have some fun. Like, find a problem that you're really in love with and just roll it out there and see what happens. Because what's the worst? You get up there, you pitch, and you don't walk away with, some money that you wouldn't have had anyways, or you put together a, pitch deck and application and, you get some really helpful feedback that helps you move forward regardless, but you just don't do the competition. Like, you have no downside. You only have upside with this.
Great, thank you. And so we'll go to Ája, who's going to create unicorns by guilting startups. I think that's going to be your new tagline. But anything that we missed?
No, we're right at time. But I mean, I would say for the gBeta community and Generator in general, for us to have started around 2012 and to be nationally accredited now around the same lines of Y Combinator and Techstars, I think is a good feat, right? That we're definitely on the right track here. And so one of the things I mentioned in our last group that I'll leave you guys with is when you're physically thinking about a startup, we will hold you accountable, as Ryan mentioned, but motivation is key. And motivation that was given to me when I was a consultant was that I have to find a map: mastery, autonomy, and purpose. So if you don't have mastery of what you're looking at, if you don't have autonomy, which we will give you, but we will, I'm not a professor, right? You're not getting graded for this. I'm not going to call you in for, teacher conferences or anything like that. I'll say, hey, you said you were going to do this on Friday. And if you don't have it on Friday, I may ping you one more time, but I'm not tracking you down. I'm giving you autonomy because this is your boat to steer, right? And then the purpose. The idea of you physically, as Ryan said, have a solution a solution on a problem that you love and that you want to, go forth and conquer, if you will, or, want to do good. Your purpose is to do good. That's why I've stayed in this so long, is I want to do good. So as long as you have your map, then you would be successful in whatever you do. So I'll leave you with that.
Well, thank you. I think we're at time now. So if all of you could join me in thanking Ryan and Ája for their help today. And we hope that people join the Morgenthaler-Pavey Startup Competition in gBeta in 2021. Thank you.